Welcome to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
This is changing subjects, but I've been curious. I know you're interested and well read theologically and so forth. You pay attention to the church and have been an elder at your church and all of this. So, are there? I'm curious if you're seeing particular trends in the church today, or maybe speakers or preachers or authors that are popular now or in the last year or two. Nothing to do now with race or anything like that, but that you're concerned about or you think are exceptionally, good? Any newcomers on kind of that front, or any trends you're seeing in the church that either for the good or the bad?
So I'm just trying to think. I think when I'm reading theology, I'm reading more dead people, old dead people, than modern live people.
Yeah.
And so, because again, I mean, thinking about the year that we're in, and with COVID and politics, how many religious leaders have weighed in and have chosen to politicize whatever's going on in their situation. And so I have found some of that helpful and interesting. I've found some of it unhelpful. And so when I'm reading what I have found in 2020, if I'm reading something that's even 2019 theologically based, it is probably an old dead guy, truthfully, more often than not. And so that's generally where I'm going, because it goes back to my prior point where I want to just weigh the information. I want to try to take it in and astutely look at it. And then if it's something current, I just want to be mindful of what is informing this current perspective.
Yeah.
I don't want to be overly swayed by the things that seem just hot topics today. I don't need another hot take on things.
Right. I think that is a wise way to look at it, is if there is a new trend or fad that, all right, let's see what it's about. Let's see what it's saying. But let's not assume. Maybe we should take a little bit of a hesitant look at it, at least initially. Because, I mean, the Bible's 2,000 plus years old, right? And so, and it's the inspired word of God. So if something new is coming along, let's really make sure. I mean, we had 2,000 years to arrive at a particular viewpoint that apparently now we're just arriving at. So that should be, not to say we don't keep learning new things, of course, but take a somewhat cautious view on latest trends and fads.
Yeah, I think Americans want the latest. We want the best. We are conditioned to be consumers, and that has bled into our churches and our theology.
Yeah.
And so I want to not give into that easily. I'm not that I'm saying like I can dodge it, but I want to try my best to fight that.
Yeah. Our pastors, where we go to church at Emmanuel, Nashville, Andrew goes, there's two, by the way, that's where I met him. I would say they take pains to not express their political viewpoint. But then what was interesting was we had a pastor theologian on here from Christ Pres, a guy named David Filson, and he has in his Instagram bio that he's a Republican. And his thought process was, people deserve to know how he believes, and some of his best friends disagree with him, but at least they know where he stands, and they can reason through and have a good conversation. So I just sort of saw that as like two different kind of viewpoints on there, and I think either one sort of works. I think what we would both agree with, both Filson and, say, TJ, who doesn't come out with his political viewpoints, at least not publicly, would both agree on that the pastor who is, bringing his political viewpoints across the pulpit and getting loud and proud with all that gets out of it gets contentious and divisive, and now the Gospels does get a little bit clouded. So is that how you would see it as well?
Well, every pastor needs to measure his words. I think the pulpit is a unique spot to be. But you're on the hook for everything that you say. And I think that's where some patient and some measured perspective comes into play here. Very few things are as simple in reality as a tweet or as an aside comment or illustration in a sermon. And so I tend to want to push to very candid, very radical, hard, difficult, awkward conversations in person. And so when the pastor is preaching, he's in a spot to speak truth, to share the truth of the Bible. And where he can make applicable connections to today, he should. But then he needs to know his congregation as well. Mm-hmm. He needs to know how things are going to land. I mean, he's not a speaker who flies in. He's not a speaker. He's a preacher. Yep. He's a pastor. He's a shepherd. And so he has to know how to take that passage for the week and present it in such a way that it will land with his congregation. And so there's a lot more to think about there than, is he a political preacher or is he not a political preacher?
Sure.
And so, and some of it comes down to comfort level. I know there are people who are convictional on both sides of this topic who would say, a preacher should absolutely, get into certain political topics. I know others who would say, no, stay out of those weeds, they would say, So I'm not a preacher, but I think it is something there will be times, and are times that I think a preacher needs to weigh into political issues. Mm-hmm. And I think there are times where he needs to not.
Yeah.
And my hope and prayer for him would be that he's wise enough to know the difference between the two.
Well, I was going to say, we're trusting him to rightly divide the word of God, so we should have some level of trust there,
right,
at that level.
And if you're in an elder-led church, there's a plurality of elders there who can help navigate that. Mm-hmm.